All right, Mr. Collins,
Yes, ma'am.
would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
My name is Leslie Collins Jr., 425-625.
Okay, Mr. Collins, I'm gonna, Mrs. Jackson, was the trial judge in your case, and so she's going to recuse herself from this proceeding.
Okay.
So let me acknowledge first the folks who are here today. We have in support there with you, Tiffany Davis, Henry Davis, and Bobby Wallace. And here with us in Baton Rouge, we have Shelby Collins and Valerie Watkins. In opposition, we also have Elizabeth Foose, Laura Carrington, Miriam Giesler, Susan Carroll, and a representative from the DA's office in East Baton Rouge Parish. First, Mr. Collins, I'm going to read some identifying information into the record and ask you to confirm it, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marabella. Your case has been assigned to him. He'll take the lead on the interview. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Collins, you're here today before the pardon board because you are seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in East Baton Rouge Parish, the 19th Judicial District. In June 29th of 2000, you received a life sentence, 2 counts of aggravated rape, second-degree kidnapping, and attempted second-degree kidnapping. 2 counts. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you answer Mr. Marabella's questions?
Good afternoon, Mr. Collins. My name is Tony Marabella. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How old are you, sir?
I'm 56.
And how long have you been in prison on these charges?
25 years and 28 days.
Tell me a little bit about your educational background, Mr. Collins. How far did you go in school?
I graduated from Glen Oaks High in 1986, and I went 3 years of Baton Rouge School of Computer, and I dropped out to get when I got my CDL license.
And in 1998, were you working?
Yes, sir, for Klein Peter Milk.
Okay. And what did you do for Klein Peter?
I had a night route where I delivered to like 48 or 49 schools. They'll have their order on the door, and I have a key to every one of them, and I'll deliver the milk and put it in the cooler with their receipt. And that's it. I'll come Monday through Friday.
Now, at that time, did you have any kind of a drinking issue or a drug issue?
I had no drug issue, but I drink occasionally.
What do you consider occasionally? Tell me a little bit about your drinking.
Probably Saturday and Sunday, I'll get a 6-pack.
What was your marital relationship then? Were you married at the time?
I had been married. Yes, sir. I've been married right at 4 years.
And who were you married to?
My ex-wife name is Carletta Guy.
You're no longer married to her? When did that marriage terminate?
We got divorced in 06, 05 or 06.
So probably what, 8 years after you went to prison?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about what happened. You were convicted of 3 separate offenses, okay? Or at least 3 separate offenses were involved. May, July 2nd, and July 29th of 1998. Let's talk about the one on May 1st of 1998 involving Miss Allison Harper. Tell me what happened in your own words. I want you to understand, and I believe you do, got the complete file, the record, and everything else. I just want to know what your position is and what your story is.
Well, with Miss Harper, I met her, and I believe it was at the corner of Highland Road and Street. And we drove to a location, and I forced myself upon her.
Whoa, wait. You say you met her. How did you meet her?
At the Circle K, and I was going over some friend's house, and I asked her to show
Now,
me.
I think we might be confused about which one we're talking about. I'm talking about the one on May 1st. Ms. Harper was an LSU student getting into her apartment. Remember what I'm talking about now? That's the first.
Yeah,
So tell me about that.
I met her, Jesus Christ. And she drove, I met her at the same place, I would believe. It's been a minute, sir. I ask you for forgiveness, but she drove to a location by Tigerland.
Well, you say you met her. How did you meet her? I mean, y'all were friends?
Well, no, sir. She followed me to a location, and
How is it that she followed her? I mean, what prompted her to follow? You've been convicted of rape now, so if you want to be honest with me and tell me exactly what happened, go ahead. But if your story is, oh, I just met these ladies and we got chatting and
I know, sir.
and I forced myself. Now, you can either be honest with me.
She
Cutting out a little bit, or maybe you're just not answering. I'm not sure.
No, it's cutting out a little bit. I'm trying to recall. It's been 25 years, but she
I'm sure they remember.
I told her about a party, and I asked her to show me this location, and she followed me, and we went over by elementary school, and that's when I forced myself upon her.
And what was the purpose of your asking her to show you how to get somewhere? And what were you going to do? What did you understand you were going to do when you convinced her to help you?
Oh, it was bad. Sir, would you please repeat that question? It's breaking
My
up.
question is very simple. You got this lady to follow you or to go with you, and your intention was to rape her.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's be honest about that. So this whole idea of going to find some place with a party was just a ruse for you to get her to come with you.
Yes, sir.
And so why?
Well, at the time, me and my wife was going through a bad marriage. We just got into a house in Baker, and my wife told me, I have two girls, Ashley and Amber, and she told me that my first kid wasn't mine, and it come as a surprise, and something just snapped in me, and our marriage went downhill from there, and we were trying to work on it in between the time that I've done what I've done, and I'm not using that as a scapegoat because there's no reason to do what I've done.
Well, you did write that in your application, that what you were going through with your wife had a lot to do with this, although you said, I'm not blaming that completely on it. Can we both?
Yeah, that's
on May the 1st of
that's the main reason why.
Let me finish my question. Can we both agree that on May 1st of 1998, when you came in contact with Ms. Harper, it was your intention to get her to come with you so you could rape her?
Yes, sir.
So tell me what you did.
I forced myself upon her.
Did you harm her? Did you punch her? How did you force yourself on her?
Yeah, I slapped her with the keys. I had a key ring with a with a bottle cap opener on it, and when I slapped her, it scratched her in the face.
July the 2nd of 1998, very similar circumstance. Miss Carroll.
Yes, Miss Denise Carroll. I told her I was looking for a party, and she knew where it was at, and she got in my vehicle, and we went over by the Catholic church, and I forced myself upon
It was your
her as well.
intention when you met Miss Carroll to try to get her to come with you to rape her.
Yes, sir.
And what did you do? How did you physically, obviously you harmed her significantly, but what did you physically do to her?
Miss Harper?
Carroll, the second.
Denise Carroll,
Yes.
just had sex.
You forced yourself on her.
Yes, sir.
How did you force yourself on her?
By getting on her. I use no punches or nothing.
July 29th, on July Street, Miss Laura Pierce. Tell me about that incident.
I was coming from the apartments, talking to a young lady I know named Dawn, and my truck clunked out on me, and I needed her to pump the brakes for me. And she started up and pumped the brakes, and I put the hood down, and I came around there, and I was finna get in the car, and I made her get out on the other side, but she took it as the wrong way.
So you had just, within 2 months before, picked up 2 women and raped them. And here's another one that believes you're about to try to kidnap her. You didn't have that same intent?
No, sir, not on that. No.
What was your intentions on her?
Well, she was in the driver's seat. As I walked around there, I was finna get in the car, and she got in, and I blocked the way, and I said, well, excuse me, and she got out. And I closed the door, I closed my truck door, and I left.
Mr. Collins, you've taken sex offender treatment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I took it in 03 risk management, and then I got a certificate, and in 04 I facilitated the class.
I understand that, but it's surprising to me that having done all of those things, have done all of that work that you've done while you've been in prison, you still describe these horrible rapes as, well, I just had sex with the second lady, and the first one I kind of forced myself on them, and yeah, I just kind of slapped her with this. You don't seem to really understand the significance of what you've done to these victims.
Sir, I know what I done was horrible, and I had no business doing that. And I'm very remorseful for what I've done to hurt 2 young ladies. If I ever get the chance, I ask them for forgiveness. I shouldn't have done what I've done. I'm owning up. It's my fault and responsibility for what happened to the 2 young ladies, you know, and my only lifeline and support is women. I got 3 sisters and 2 daughters, and I never want them to ever have to go through what I put them through.
Well, I'm gonna ask you one more time, since you
So I am very remorseful.
I'm gonna ask you, since you've been in prison all of this time, explain to me, as best you understand, why you did what you did, why you raped these two women. Now, you said, oh, maybe my wife had something to do with it, but you told the judge, and your position was, oh, these were, you even called them prostitutes. You lied about what you even did. So tell me now, as you sit here before me and you look back on who you were then, why did you commit these horrible crimes against these women?
Mr. Marabella, when I knew I was coming here today to explain my situation, the first thing I thought of was all the lies that I've told Miss Jackson during the trial about Allison Harper and Denise Carroll. I know what I done was wrong. And I had no business doing what I've done. But I come here today to tell the truth because this is clemency. This is for remorsefulness and for truthfulness. You know, what I said at trial all was pretty much made up. And even Your Honorable Jackson told me that I was one of the worst liars she ever met. I come here today to straighten the story of I was wrong. I take full responsibility for hurting two young ladies. But also at the same time, I'm very remorseful for what I've done.
Well, tell me how you think you've hurt them. What do you think they've experienced?
Well, I'm in my 7th month of victim awareness, and we always talk about the victim, the victim itself, the people you hurt, the tertiary victim, which is like the third, or could be her bosses, her daughters, or whatever. But I know I've hurt more than one person by what I've done, and I'm very remorseful, sir. If I had the chance, I would ask them for forgiveness from the bottom of my heart. I'm not the same person who in 1998 came to the penitentiary.
Mr. Collins, I hear you talking about you. My question to you is, what do you think your actions did to them? I hear you talking, oh, I'm remorseful, all of those things, I'm a changed person. But what do you understand what you did to these ladies, how it's affected them?
Yeah, it may have affected them through marriage. It may have them having nightmares at night. I remember when I was in trial, they both said they went to rape crisis. I know I've heard them, and I'm very remorseful for that.
What programs have you taken while you've been in prison that have been the ones that have helped you the most?
The ones that have helped me the most, I would definitely say I'm in 7 months of victim awareness. It helped me a whole bunch. And the risk management with the 27 risk factors, I've taken it and I facilitated. I've taught dudes after I got out of it, I taught it for about 1.5 years at Camp D. And anger management, I've got a certificate in that and 100 hours.
What would be your transition plan if you were ever to be released? Where would you live? Where would you go? What kind of work would you do?
Well, I got a welding certificate in here, and I knew a little something about welding on the street, but if I was to leave, I would reapply and get my CDL license, my Class A CDL license back, and possibly drive truck again.
Gordon, what can you tell us about Mr. Collins?
Really don't have anything to add, Mr. Marabella, at this point.
Madam Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Hurley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Collins,
Yes, sir.
good afternoon. I see where you completed your sex offender treatment in 2004. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you been to the working cell block anytime after 2004?
Yes, sir.
What were you there for?
After '04, I had 2 fights and I had a few 21s in my jacket.
And you had not a few, you had 4 21 sex offenses after you completed your sex offender treatment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Last one was 2014. Is that correct?
My very last write-up. Yes, sir.
So you tell me that you have rehabilitated yourself. You're not a danger to society anymore, but after you completed and facilitated sex offender treatment, you had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 sex offenses. All serious, and you were sent to the working cell block.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rocha. Okay, Mr. Collins, we'd like to hear from the folks who are there with you in support, and we have indicated they want to speak is Bobby Wallace.
Good evening, how you doing?
Go ahead.
Every time I appear before this board, it's like a cake. Every guy I come to represent or speak about for the character, they have been a part of pouring a part into my life at some point or another. And we don't talk about what we did. We talk about the things that we try to change and we try to be better people. And we run across each other's paths at different times. And I've run across Mr. Leslie quite a few times, and we sat down and we talked. And our paths ran different, but every time we get together, he sowed a seed into me because of the type of things he was into. He was trying to go to church. He was going to church, and you know he was a real good guy. He do whatever he can to try and better himself, and he'd be around positive people. He stayed himself a lot, and I had a good vibe with him. He's my brother. We go to church together. So I'm saying that to say that everybody make bad choices, no matter how bad the decision is. You make mistakes. However, the heart, God is going to do whatever. And I thank you all for giving me an opportunity to speak on his behalf.
Well, thank you. We appreciate hearing from you. Now we'll hear from the opposition. And first, could we hear from Ms. Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you. I'm an educator and a longtime family friend of one of his victims. And I have spent the morning watching this board, and I want to start by commending you all for how thoughtfully you all approach your job and the genuine equitable consideration you give to each person who has come before you today. It's really impressive and I appreciate it. I'm here today because it is important all these years later to speak to the ongoing trauma and damage that this man continues to force upon good, honest people who do not deserve such horrors. This man is not just a convicted rapist. He is a serial rapist. He raped intentionally. He had a plan. He had a scheme that he used. He had a notebook that he carried around in his truck that he used to track and to lure. He had an area that he searched. He had a type. There are more than just 2, the 2 that he was convicted for. Thank God he was caught. I sat with the victims during the very long, brutal trial where he, yes, accused them of being prostitutes who were just angry. And because the families of the victims were in the courtroom, I sat with the victims so they had some support. And so I didn't just watch these young college freshmen and sophomores reel from this unfixable damage, but I watched their fathers and their grandparents and their mothers also go through this real life, never wake up from a nightmare. Hundreds of people suffer to this day from his crimes, his selfish, compulsive actions. Do not release this man into the world to do this again. Premeditated serial rape is not a curable behavior. Remorse is irrelevant. This man is a danger to society. Please keep us all safe. Please keep him in prison. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Carroll? Would you step up to the podium? Everything Beth said, I was going to say that she said much more eloquently than me. The only thing I can say is that my daughter's not here because she couldn't. We can't. We're reliving. This is like 20 years ago, 23 years ago. Today is the same thing. And she just couldn't do it. So I'm doing it for her as well as all my friends. The offender's life has changed. And so have my daughters and ours and all the other girls. And they will be living with it for the rest of their lives. And I truly feel that he should live with it for the rest of his life and that his sentence was appropriate. Period. Thank you for being here and listening. Like Deb said, I respect you and the job you have to do. Thank you, ma'am. Liaison.
Thank you, Chairman Rosado. There's really not much more to say after everything that we've heard. I will just add that there is a reason why the crime of aggravated rape, which is now first degree rape in the state of Louisiana, carries a life sentence. And you can just things as well. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Collins, is there a statement you'd like to make to us before we have?
Yes, ma'am. To all the opposition and to y'all, I want to thank y'all for giving me the opportunity. I'm very, very, very remorseful and very sorry how I hurt Miss Carroll and Miss Harper. I put myself in a very, very bad position in life. I'm like Mr. Wallace said, I made a lot of bad decisions in life. And I'm very, very, very remorseful. I'm sorry how I done what I've done and got the label that the state of Louisiana or what y'all just labeled me as, and it's not like that. I'm not the same person from 1998 to right now. I made bad decisions in the penitentiary as well, with the 21s and the jacket. But as you can see, in 2014, I took a whole turn in life. I really established my relationship with God. I live by the word of God. This, you may be used to hearing this because guys want to seek their freedom, but I'm really, really honestly with you, telling you this. And I hope and pray for Miss Carol and Miss Harper. That their life can move crying, and I hope any guy that they run across don't have to suffer because of what I done them. You know, I'm very, very remorseful, and I understand.
All right, we're having some technical issues, but I think we're prepared to vote. Can you hear us okay over there at the penitentiary?
We can hear you. Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Marabella will be voting first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Collins, you know, I think while you've been in prison, you've learned a lot of things. I think you learned them like a lot of people learn and memorize things and kind of repeat them. I don't think that they've sunk in. I don't think that the sex offender treatment really took. The way you describe these horrible crimes clearly makes me understand that had you not been caught, there probably would have been a lot more victims doing what you were doing. Based upon the nature of the crime, the multiple victims, the effect on these victims, your attitude about what it is you did, law enforcement opposition, victim opposition, in my opinion, insufficient time, sir. My vote would be to deny today. Good luck to you.
Mr. Freeman,
I concur totally with what Mr. Marabella has said. I thank the victim for showing up and his family. But I concur.
Mr. Roche.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to thank everybody for their participation because the victim's input is a very important part of this process. My vote is the same for the same reasons.
Mr. Collins, I'm glad to hear you say that your life is taking a turn starting in 2014. That's good to hear. And as I understand it, I believe your job is at the chapel. Do you still work at the chapel?
Yes, ma'am. I've been there for 7 years. I'm the groundkeeper.
Well, that's good to hear. I will say this, I do agree with my colleagues at this time. You know, I just don't think you're ready yet. I think there still could be a public safety risk. So my vote today is to deny. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
You know, when Miss Jackson recused herself, I said, "Ooh, this is going to be," because we have seen Miss Jackson having been the judge for many inmates, where she then is on the parole board or commutation board, and I have never seen her recuse herself. So, you know, that to me just simply says that she believes strongly in the sentence she gave, and she knew that she couldn't be impartial, and good for her. I expect nothing less from her, of course, but what was interesting too is that he stated how Miss Jackson, he remembered that clearly. This is it. June 30th, year 2000. Sentenced to life in prison by sorry, Miss Jackson. And thank you, Richard, for sharing this. So he did that to 2 LSU students, testified at his trial, and he testified at his own trial, by the way. He said that they were prostitutes who wrongly accused him. The sentencing judge, I could just picture it in Miss Jackson's voice. The sentencing judge told Leslie J. Collins Jr. Thursday that nothing he said during his April trial rang true. He said one of the women got angry when he couldn't pay her for the sex. Your performance on the witness stand, I'm never going to be able to mimic her, so but just imagine it in her voice. Your performance on the witness stand was the most spectacular case of lying this court has ever heard. Judge Bonnie Jackson. The jury convicted Collins, 32 years old at the time, of 2 counts of aggravated and 2 counts of second-degree kidnapping, 1 count of second-degree attempted kidnapping. That was for the one where, no, she just was in his car to pump the brakes. I mean, what's wrong with just admitting here at your hearing that you did attempt to kidnap her? I mean, come on, like, it doesn't make a difference. All they want to see is that you're saying the truth, and yet he still shows up and attempts to lie. And he even did his whole cry thing at the end. I mean, the victim who spoke, the survivor, Elizabeth, who spoke, like the other survivor mother that had said, I mean, she just, it was just perfect. I mean, she said everything. Absolutely. You can't. I'm going to put a note there. I want to put together like a montage of all great survivor speeches and put it in one thing. So I'm putting a note here. Man, she was just, I'm looking at her now, just incredible. And I agree with what you said. I mean, there's just not, I mean, he was a serial and offender, and there are many more that we don't know about. And he would plan it, and he would had a notepad, and he would track them. It's crazy, it's crazy. And he starts off with kind of just, Mr. Mirabella came in for the jugular right at the beginning. Mr. Mirabella and Miss Jackson, they go way back. They go way back. They're friends. And I'm sure he knew. I mean, everyone knew about this case, how bad it was. And then they see the report that he states earlier, and even the parole project won't defend him. Oh, I met her and we went on a drive, and then I forced myself on her. I mean, I didn't hurt them. I just, it's like, wow. And then he has the sex offenses in prison, and it's like, what? You're trying to get a commutation of your sentence. Remember, this isn't a parole hearing. They would need to recommend to the governor to sign off on parole. And also, you only need 4 judges. You don't need 5 for a commutation hearing. When there's 4, you need it to be unanimous. When there's 5, you can actually have 1 judge, 1 board member not vote in favor and still get the recommendation to the governor. So you are at a disadvantage when there's only 4, I think. But you're not at a disadvantage when the 5th would have been your sentencing judge. And, we could use some more Miss Jackson life sentences. So these other judges, they like to give just, 10 years, 20 years, 8 years, 4 years. It's interesting. At the beginning, he said, I don't know, it's been 25 years. I can't remember. And Mr. Mirabella shot back, I bet you your victims remember. And he's still unbelievable that he would still deny the 3rd one. I have, sadly, I don't have any appeals. He never appealed his sentence. I don't have those on record. I can't get into the details and more of what he said on the stand, but you can imagine Miss Jackson said it was the worst case of lying. We'll do one more from today.
All right, Mr. Dickerson, good afternoon, sir. Would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and your DOC number, please.
My name is Roy Dickerson. My name is Roy Dickerson, DOC number 174475.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. You're here this afternoon seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Jefferson Parish District as a habitual offender for aggravated arson. In October 1999, you received a life sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Your case has been assigned to Mr. Roche. Would you answer any questions he may have, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, Mrs. Dickerson.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good. Mr. Dickerson, I'm going to do a little presentation and then we're going to have a conversation, okay?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, fellow board members, before us this afternoon, we have Roy Dickerson, DOC number 174475. Mr. Dickerson is here this afternoon seeking a recommendation for a commutation of sentence for a 1999 conviction for aggravated arson in Jefferson Parish. He was found guilty by a jury of his peers on September 15, 1999, as charged of aggravated arson and was scheduled for sentencing on October 12, 1999. Before the sentencing on October 1st, 1999, the Jefferson Parish DA's office filed a multi-bill based on 3 felony convictions. The first conviction was this conviction for aggravated arson. The second conviction was a 1994 felony conviction for second-degree battery, which he served 1 year at DOC. Well, he was sentenced to 1 year at DOC. That sentence, 1 second. Let's see. The 1994 felony conviction for second, which he served 1 year in a parish jail. And there's no signs of him serving any supervision. So I imagine, Mr. Dickerson, you served the whole 12 months on that sentence in the parish jail. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the third conviction was a 1983 felony conviction for simple robbery, which he was sentenced to 5 years at DOC. That sentence was suspended. He was placed on 5 years supervision, and that supervision was completed on time and satisfactorily, and he had no violation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Based on a conviction for simple robbery and second-degree battery, where he only served 12 months of incarceration, the DA's office filed a multi-bill. When court convened on October 12, 1999, Mr. Dickerson was found guilty of the multi-bill, and the judge sentenced him to life and hard labor at DOC without benefit of probation, parole, or suspension and sentence. I'd like to make a note at this time. If an individual was found guilty of aggravated arson today in the state of Louisiana under revised statute 14:51, The sentencing options are a minimum sentence of 6 years at DOC and a maximum sentence of 20 years at DOC. And if multi-bill and it was doubled, it would be a maximum sentence of 12 years or 40 years at DOC. I will read revised statute 1451 into the record at the end of my presentation, Part B, and I will read verbatim what the statute says about aggravated arson. Mr. Dickerson is currently 66 years old. And at the time of the offense, he was 42. He's been incarcerated for a little over 24 years. Is that information correct, Mr. Dickerson?
Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir, it is.
Look, Mr. Dickerson, tell the parole board members in your own words exactly what led up to the events in the early morning hours of March 29th, 1999.
On that particular day, me and the victim, Ms. Wanda Robinson, had a misunderstanding. We had a casual relationship and she wanted to break it off because she found out that I was a drug addict. Due to the fact that I was a drug addict, I couldn't handle it, and by me being under the influence of drugs, I made a bad decision that night to retaliate on Miss Robinson by throwing a gas bomb through her window.
Okay, that was a kitchen window, right?
Yes, sir.
As a result of you throwing the gas bomb into the home, tell us exactly what happened. Was anybody injured?
No, sir, no one was injured, thank God.
Did you know that her child was in the house at the time you did this?
No, I didn't, sir. Usually on the weekend, children go spend the weekend with their grandparents. I had no idea the kid was in the house, sir.
If you had an opportunity to speak to the victim, what would you say?
I would tell Ms. Robinson it was nothing that she did wrong. I just made a bad decision. Due to my drug use, I didn't have no self-esteem. I just was out of control. My whole life revolved around drugs. It wasn't nothing she did. She did the right thing by ending the relationship. I didn't care for myself, so I didn't have the capacity to care for anyone else.
Since we're talking about drugs and alcohol, I'm going to skip to the part of my presentation about drugs and alcohol. In your application, you stated to the court board that you admitted using drugs and drinking alcohol the night before and the morning of the offense. But in that statement, you also said you didn't want to use that as an excuse because you took full responsibility for the crime that you committed.
Yes,
So
sir.
tell me when you started using alcohol.
How old I were?
How old were you?
I say approximately 18.
And when did you use drugs for the first time?
Approximately the same age, around 18, right shortly after I graduated from high school, about 18 years of age.
Okay, what was the first drug that you used?
Marijuana.
And did you graduate to anything stronger than marijuana?
Yes, sir.
So tell me, what types of drugs did you consume and how often and how long?
Well, when I first started out, it was marijuana. Then I went to snorting cocaine, to heroin, and that became my drug of choice, cocaine and heroin,
And how often did you use it?
pretty much on a daily basis, sir.
Were you employed at the time?
Sir,
Were you employed at the time?
I received benefits, but I was working part-time because they allowed you to make a certain amount of money. Yes, I was employed.
So you consumed drugs and alcohol each and every day, and you went to work and you performed your duty.
Yes, sir.
How long, from the age of 18, how long did you consume illegal drugs, and how long were you in alcohol?
I consumed drugs from the age of 18 until 1999 when I caught the charge.
So the age of 42.
Yes, sir.
When's the last time, to be very truthful, when is the last time you used illegal drugs?
1999, March the 29th.
When's the last time you consumed any alcohol?
March the 29th, 1999.
You've never received a disciplinary write-up for contraband or intoxication that involve drugs or alcohol.
No, I haven't.
Let's go back up to my report. Opposition in this case comes from the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, which is a blanket opposition. And this office is opposed to all clemency cases and all parole cases in this jurisdiction. We also have a very strong letter of opposition from the Jefferson Parish DA's office. Let's look at your arrest record. 1 second. Mr. Dickerson, your first arrest came in 1974. And that was for receiving stolen things, and you were not prosecuted. Do you remember that?
Repeat the question, sir. I didn't understand.
Your first arrest was in November of 1974 for receiving stolen things. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was shortly after your 18th birthday, right?
Right.
And then your first felony was in Mississippi in 1975. I'm just going to summarize. You have 25 arrests and 3 felony convictions, all between the ages of 18 and 42.
Yes, sir.
A 25-year period. Well, yeah, about a 25-year period. So tell me what was going on. Why the extensive criminal background?
I didn't understand the question, sir.
What caused all the criminal activity?
Drug use. The use of drugs and alcohol.
So all your theft and your burglary charges stem from you needing money to buy drugs and alcohol.
Somewhat, yes, sir.
And based on this criminal activity, when you committed the act of aggravated arson, you were multi-billed and you received a life sentence.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Let me go back to my report. Supervision history, Mr. Dickerson has been on supervision on 3 different occasions, and all periods of his supervision were completed satisfactorily. He had no revocations on his record. Very rarely do I see a person who has an extensive criminal history and he has no revocation. He has served all of his supervision satisfactorily. And that's a plus for you, Mr. Dickerson. Disciplinary conduct, he has 15 disciplinary write-ups and 24 years of incarceration. Only 9 of those write-ups are serious Class B write-ups. His last Class B write-up was in October of 2004, which is some 19 years ago. He has a low risk assessment. He has a high school diploma from John McDonald High School in 1974. John McDonald is in New Orleans. He is in minimum custody. He has a good institutional record. All remarks by the staff were very positive. His current job is in the laundry. He does the dry cleaning. Previous jobs, he was a firehouse orderly. He worked on a ranch crew, and he worked for Prison Enterprises as a farm animal worker 3, where he received multiple in-service awards. Tell us about your time with Prison Enterprise.
Yes, sir. I worked for Prison Enterprise for approximately 4 years.
Okay. And I think you received at least 4 or 5 in-service awards for that service, right?
Yes, sir.
Programs completed, 100 hours pre-release, anger management, limiting and balance, thinking for a change, victim awareness. He belongs to the sober group AA, and he has completed peer walker training. Are there any other programs, organizational activities, or community service that you would like to mention?
No, I think you pretty much named all, sir.
At this time, I'm going to read into the record. And I'm reading from the Louisiana Legislative website in the revised statute 1451, aggravated arson. Part B, whomever commits the crime of aggravated arson shall be in prison at hard labor for not less than 6 years or more than 20 years, and shall not be fined more than $25,000. 2 years of such imprisonment and hard labor shall be served without benefit of probation, parole, or suspension in sentence. And that is the statute today. It was last amended by Act 791 of the 2014 legislative session. Ward, the Fowl Group, do you have any comments, concerns, remarks, or observations?
Mr. Rocha, you've been very thorough on the background on Roy. Like you said, last write-up was in 2010, and that was for him not picking his locker box up when they were GIing the dorm. Prior to that, it was 2005. He's worked as a Class A trustee since 2009 in various areas that were supervision, trusted in offender, have not had any problems.
So he's had Class A trustee continuous since 2009.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Let me acknowledge the folks there who are there with Mr. Dickerson. We have Henry Davis, Tiffany Davis, and Bobby Wallace. And Mr. Wallace wants to speak on behalf of Mr. Dickerson. We'd like to hear from you now.
Yes, ma'am, it's an honor. Yeah, he has gone into my life through the way he lived. He don't do much talking. We used to play basketball, and when things get a little heated, he's the jolly giant. He'd break it up and make sure everything goes straight. But it's the way he lived, the way he carries himself. It's not that he speak a lot, he show a lot. And that's some of the things that he sold into my life, because we'll sit on the side of the bed when we was in the dorm together and we'll talk. But you know, some people you just got to get the note for them to open up to you. And this is a real stressful type atmosphere. And it makes people's mind go all kind of ways. But this is a beautiful brother. And I know he'll be an asset to the community, no matter which one he go into. And I'll be right there to help him in whatever transition if he's blessed enough to be released. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And we have the Parole Project, Mr. Myers.
Well, good afternoon, Kerry Myers, Louisiana Parole Project. Here, for Mr. Dickerson, we believe Mr. Dickerson has served 24 years, as Mr. Roche has already mentioned, though he has a life sentence as a habitual offender on an offense that he would get maximum of 20 years. He's done, as you can see, he's been a trustee for more than 15 years consecutively. He has taken significant programs. He has a high school diploma. Before he went, his drug addiction fueled much of the actions that are involved here in this case. We are prepared, should he get a recommendation and get released, to provide him with a substance abuse evaluation, any substance abuse support that he might still need. But I'd like to note that he continues to work through AANA during his incarceration. He's also taken substance abuse there. As he's told you, this incarceration, I guess, if lack of a better word, has sobered him, both literally and mentally. I would just ask this board to consider all these facts and recommend him today for a commutation of sentence.
All right, thank you. We have also participating by Zoom in opposition is Ms. Wanda Robinson. She does not wish to speak, so we'd ask now if we could hear from the DA's office.
Good afternoon, Randy Myers, this is DA in Jefferson Parish. We are opposed to Mr. Dickerson's request. This is a case that he made a homemade bomb, threw it into a house that had the victim and a young child in the house at the time. It caught fire, and fortunately, they were both able to get out safely. It's a horrible crime. He's got a history, a significant criminal history, and a history of other violent acts. In sentencing him to life as a third felony offender, the court designated this as a crime of violence. And then let's look at what he's done since he's been incarcerated. His programming is limited. He really hasn't had much of any programming in the last 10 years, except for, I think he had Thinking for a Change in 2018, 100 Hours in 2016, and Victim Awareness in 2020. He's talked about a big drug problem. He has not taken, except for Thinking for a Change, any significant drug substance abuse treatment. There's strong victim opposition, and I think there's insufficient time served. He's only served about 24 years on this life sentence. For those reasons, we are opposed to his request.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dickerson, is there a statement you'd like to make to the board before we vote?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. Well, we're prepared to vote. Mr. Roche will be voting first.
Mr. Dickerson. You're 66 years old.
Yes, sir.
I don't think that you are threat to public safety. You've taken living in balance. You are a regular member of the sober group, which is a meeting on steroids. And you've done that religiously for years. You've been a Class A trustee for 15 years. You have positive remarks by Warden Falgo, an excellent disciplinary record. And as I said, your age, I think you've got to the point where you're not a threat to society. And my vote today is to grant or recommend to the governor to grant a commutation to 35 years.
Thank you. Mr. Marabella?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree with Mr. Roche. My vote likewise, Mr. Dickerson, is the same.
Mr. Freeman?
I agree with both of them, and my vote is likewise the same.
And Mrs. Jackson?
And I concur.
All right. And I do agree with my colleagues, Mr. Dickerson. So on your behalf, sir, we'll make a recommendation to the governor that your sentence be commuted to 35 years. Love to you, sir.
Thank you.
So this is an interesting one for me personally, and I think we'll do one more after this if I can get it in. And we'll also go over the court transcript. I personally agree with the decision for all the reasons that the court stated. I mean, the whole habitual offender thing is just totally nuts what Louisiana does, and they do it. A life sentence. Look at all the other crimes that we follow. We have seen people who harm children 3 times and they don't even get habitual offenders. I don't get why. I mean, the whole habitual offender thing is they do it so much for people with Schedule 2. We've seen so many life sentences for nonviolent crimes. I thought it was an interesting choice that he didn't want to speak. Probably a smart move at the end, but still interesting. And he has a parole project that's always going to make a huge difference. And I don't know, Randy objecting on the basis that he only served so much time of his life sentence when Mr. Roche stated for like 2 monologues about how the maximum for arson is 20 years in Louisiana. And then Randy went with that approach. So, I do respect Randy and I like him, but I don't understand why he fights so much to keep this. This man does not leave me the impression of someone who's dangerous. And statistically, he's done great on, while not on parole, right? He's done really, really great. And gosh, after seeing so many devastating cases, if there's going to be anyone that should get a chance, it would be him. I mean, we've seen people throw Molotov cocktails in the news and not get much time at all. So it was a strange thing why he did it. That I can't figure out exactly. Robinson, the victim, testified that. Oh no, sorry, Robinson. He who is defendant threw a homemade bomb Molotov cocktail through the dining room window of a neighbor, Wanda Robinson. Robinson causing a fire at a residence. Robinson lived at the address with her 2 children, ages 10 and 16. The defendant lived several houses away. Robinson testified that she met the defendant at a Thanksgiving turkey in 1998. Robinson socialized with the defendant but did not date him. He frequently visited with her at her house where they watched movies. The defendant cut Robinson's grass and performed odd jobs around her house. The defendant occasionally visited and left Robinson's house at late hours. At some point, Robinson decided to end all contact with the defendant. So something's going on here. That's what it was. When she told him of her intentions, the defendant became very emotional. He began threatening her, calling her constantly on the telephone, hanging up, and my understanding is that she had a fiance, right? He began threatening, calling on the telephone, hanging up, and making nasty remarks when she left her house. He also left a telephone message for Leroy Busby, Robinson's fiance, because she did have a fiance, at Busby's house and called him at work. Look, dude, he's like stalking and everything. That is scary. And not young when he was doing it either. Oof. On the afternoon of March 29, 1999, Robinson went onto the front yard to go to her garbage can. Robinson testified that the defendant was standing across the street. When he saw her, he stated, "BITCH, you are going to get off this street because I'm going to burn you down." This is kind of scary. I mean, I can see why they came in with the habitual offender thing. They said, you know what? He's escalating and he's a danger. But I would still say life sentence is a bit too harsh because people do change. That's the point of prison. But anyways, this is more intense than what we, just throwing a Molotov cocktail, I guess. Robinson ignored him, went back inside, locked the door, and told her 2 children that if they heard a noise to let her know because the defendant said he was going to burn them down. That evening, Robinson drove to the defendant's house to talk to the defendant's son. She wanted Thomas to ask the defendant to stop threatening her. So she went to the house and said, son, can you tell your dad to stop threatening us? But the defendant was there, and while they were talking, the defendant got upset. So Busby also went to the defendant's house. So her fiance went there. And when he saw Robinson's car parked there, when Busby arrived, Robinson told him not to come into the house because the defendant was in a rage. The defendant then begged Busby to come into the house because he said he wanted to talk to Busby about some things Busby needed to know about Robinson. Busby then entered into the house only because the defendant begged him. During the discussion, Busby tried to find out how the defendant obtained Busby's work number and why the defendant was calling Busby's house and leaving him messages. So, now the fiance's in the house and he's saying, "Why do you have my number? Why are you calling my work, bro?" And he wanted to probably tell him, I've been doing what and what with your fiance, but I don't know yet. Robinson testified that the defendant indicated he wanted to attack Busby. At this point, the defendant, Busby, Robinson, and Thomas were all in the front yard. And they're all acting like children. I mean, they're like, in their 40s now? It's just... Robinson told Busby that it was time for them to leave, but the defendant pushed Busby and tried to close the car door on Busby's leg. Thomas intervened, telling the defendant to leave Busby alone. Robinson and Busby then got into their vehicles and started to drive home. However, the defendant started running down the street with no shoes on, screaming and hollering and saying he wanted to talk to Busby and that he had no weapons on him. This guy's just lost it. And Robinson told Busby they should go inside the home. I mean, this is just one scary scenario. She also testified that the defendant stated, "I'm going to show y'all something." 20 minutes later, she heard a loud noise in the house, and when they came out of the bedroom, the front of her house was on fire. So now we can see how it all escalated. So, you know, he's dating her. She's in denial about it, but I mean, it seems that it looks like they were kind of having an affair. She wanted to end it. He couldn't take it. He acts out, lashes out in all sorts of ways. Then there's some type of physical confrontation in his house. He loses it, and then he does throw a Molotov cocktail into her house. Robinson told Busby that they should go inside of her home because she did not trust the defendant. She also testified, I'm going to show, okay, this is when it happened. Robinson testified that she started having problems with the defendant 2 weeks before the fire was set. I missed this. Although they were home at the time, no one was hurt in the fire, and the fire burned the drapes and 2 dining room tables. Robinson testified that she started having problems with the defendant 2 weeks before the fire. However, she never called the police and did not attempt to get a restraining order. It's just going through all the details. I guess I won't really bore you and read you everything, but I'll put the link in the description if you want to go through it. Then they go through analysis. How could they prove it? Blah, blah, blah. And of course, he was found guilty. And the sentence was affirmed, and he thought he would spend his whole life in prison, but he's Meyer versus Meyer. Kerry won this time. What do you think? Do you think that he's? I mean, I feel like with him, with age, he's just not going to be dangerous. It's so much to what we've have seen compared to other. Like, if anyone should get a second chance, a recommendation to the governor, I think it would be him. And it's also different when you don't see actual victims come out and make any emotional statements. But love to hear your thoughts as always. We'll jump to the next one. Okay.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Lambert. Would you introduce yourself, tell us your name and DOC number.
109947.
All right, and you have counsel with you today?
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry.
Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, Adrienne Hutchison, attorney with the Louisiana Parole Project, here on behalf of Mr. Jackie Lambert. I'm sorry, we're still filing in.
I see that, and I'm going to read the list of names, at least that I have, who are there. We have Maria Thibodeau, Alvin Mallory, Doris Lambert, Angela Wright, Dorothy Joseph, Fallon Joseph, Tiquan Kohler, Krista Chase Williams, Michael James Williams, Larry Kelly, Ray Lane, Mary J. Williams, Paul Stewart. By Zoom, we have Daryl Miles. I think we're trying to still reach Mr. Rick Ledoux, who wants to speak in behalf. We have the Parole Project. I guess I got everybody. And Ms. Hutchinson, I have as speaking in support Mr. Rick Ledoux, Daryl Miles, and the Parole Project. Is there any other person there? I don't have any indication of somebody there speaking.
Mr.
Oh,
Ledoux is actually here.
I do see.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yes, so we have everybody present in person to speak today. Thank you.
Good. And we do have also joining by Zoom, just observing Ms. Liz Young, the victim's granddaughter. She is in opposition. So, Mr. Lambert, let me just read some identifying information into the record. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Freeman. Your case has been assigned to him. He'll take the lead on the interview. Okay, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Lambert, you're here before the pardon board this afternoon. You're seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in the 15th Judicial District in Lafayette Parish in May of 1986. You received a life sentence for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that information correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, would you answer Mr. Freeman, please?
Okay, how old are you?
I'm 65,
Okay, and how long have you been in prison?
40 years,
48?
40
30.
years.
Okay. But do you have anything pending in another jurisdiction with regards to this crime?
No, none that I know of, sir.
None that you know.
Oh, appeal, I'm sorry.
What-
Excuse me. It's an appeal, yes, yes, I do.
Okay, so it's under appeal. What stage is that in? Can you tell us? Your
Stage
count?
Oh, counsel.
So to my knowledge, it was a post-conviction relief that is now with the Third Circuit Court of Appeal for some factual innocence claims.
Okay. So what is your statement with regards to the incident? Did you have anything to do with it?
No, I did not.
Were you at the residence at all?
No, I was not.
Did you know the victim?
No, I did not.
You went to trial, you were found guilty of second-degree murder. You do have an affidavit from one of the co-defendants who said that they did it and you were not there. Do you have a drug or an alcohol problem?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you consider yourself a drug addict?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what kind of treatment have you received?
Substance abuse program. I've learned that substance abuse triggers or changes my mind and can destroy my life.
Okay, what were some of your triggers? Do you remember?
Yes, I do, sir. It was not paying attention to the triggers that I was using. The anger.
All right. You have lots of support letters on in your support. Law enforcement comments, the sheriff is opposed. The chief is opposed. Your family, Lorena Thibodeau, your sister, is unopposed. The victims, Liz Young, Ralph Young, John Young, and are all opposed to you getting out. What kind of classes have you taken?
Substance abuse, anger management, and 100 hours.
What did you learn from anger management?
I've learned that anger management has triggers. And those triggers can reduce my anger.
Okay. Let's see what other classes you've taken. Really just anger management, pre-release 1 and 2. You took any other classes beside those 3? Yeah.
Also, I have not,
For AA or NA or?
only substance abuse.
So you don't attend AA right now? Do you
No,
attend any meetings?
sir, none that I know of. No, sir.
Okay, your disciplinary record is good. You only have 5 write-ups. Last in 1997. So that's very commendable. You're a low risk, you're a low minimum, low need. You know, we don't have a lot to go on. Where will you go? What will you do if you get out? Besides, I know you're going to the parole project. That's a good thing. Any other thing you're going to be doing?
Yes, sir, I'm going to be doing the field of plumbing.
All right. Do you have any medical problem?
Yes, I do. I was gas poisoned. And through the gas poison, I was affected through speech impediment, loss of memory, and nervousness.
Okay, when did you get this poisoning from the gas?
I assume somewhere in the early or mid-20s, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Do you belong to any clubs in the prison? Do any community service?
No, I do not.
Warden, what can you tell me about Mr. Lambert?
Well, the first thing, Mr. Freeman, is he has taken a chemical dependency treatment program here. I'm looking at the certificate. It is not what we would call substance abuse at this time, but it was taken back in July of 2001, and he does have a certificate of completion on that. As far as his time here at Angola, he's been in the plumbing shop since '92. Been a Class A trustee since '98. Worked in the plumbing shop up until 2008. Did pest control for us. His write-ups have been, as you said, he's only got 5, and the last one was a couple of decades ago. We've not had any issues.
All right. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Could we hear from Mr. Rick Ledoux, please?
Yes, ma'am. No. We can hear you right there.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Go
ma'am.
ahead.
I've been a chaplain here, volunteer chaplain program here with Cowboys for Christ. Actually 29 years in September will be our first service we did. Jackie was in our first service we did back at Camp F. I've known him ever since my first service here, 29 years. He stayed in church with us for many years back at Camp F, doing the services back there. After his incident with the gas thing, he was moved to main prison, and we still are in and out of main prison periodically with services there. So I've known Jackie all those years too. He went through a very hard time with that gas thing. It was very serious. I mean, Jackie had a really hard time to overcome that. He's done well to overcome it. But Jackie has stayed strong as far as a Christian. Jackie has stayed strong in the Lord ever since I've known him. He's been just a great friend to me and to all my team that I brought in over the years, and that's been a multiple number of people. He's always been a part of, when he could physically come, you know, he's always been a part of our church services, main prison, Camp F. Now he's at Camp C. He was in church with him last night there. Jackie has been strong in the Lord even throughout the trials that he's been through with the gassing problem that really caused him a lot of physical problems. As far as his work, I knew him before he had that incident, and Jackie was probably one of the hardest workers that we had here at the institution. He was always called out. I mean, there was a plumbing job needed fixing, Jackie'd be working late at night or, just every day. Jackie was just extremely dedicated to whatever. I've never heard security say anything bad about Jackie. I've never ran into another inmate that had a beef with Jackie or wasn't really, just a very close friend to him. He's been a friend to these people here in this community for generations now, I guess you'd say years and years. We certainly would try to help support Jackie any way we could. If he gets out, wherever he goes, whatever he does, we'll be there certainly spiritually and prayerfully for him. But if we can do any physical thing to assist him in making the transition, from the prison life here back in society, me and my team are more, which is about a dozen people. We're more than willing to just do everything we can to help support Jackie if he gets out.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Darrell Miles. He's not on, but he couldn't connect. Okay. The Parole Project.
Good afternoon, Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. Taking out the whole concept of factual innocence here, and which is significant. Just looking at Mr. Lambert's record, in 39 years, 5 disciplinary write-ups, the last one 25 years ago. As when he was a plumber before the gassing incident, he was one of the most valued employees, maintenance employees that they had at Angola. At the time he came here to Angola in 1984, there wasn't a lot of programs for lifers at that time. So he did what a lot of lifers did. He made himself very valuable through his plumbing skills. And once you become valuable, you're going to stay there. And yet he still continued to work even after the gassing incident, even though he's limited in what he can do. He did complete the chemical dependency class. He earned his GED in 1988, the things that he could do. Again, you heard the comments of the warden. If you just didn't even look at the other issue, his record standing on its own, Mr. Lambert's been a model prisoner. And just based on that alone, I would ask this board to give him a recommendation today to 60 years.
Okay, thank you. Did Mr. Miles ever connect? Yes, he did. All right, Mr. Miles, we'd like to hear from you.
Oh.
You're on mute, Mr. Miles.
Yes, excuse my tardiness. Yes, we're here to support Mr. Lambert in his efforts. I've been knowing him for quite some time now, and our program is geared toward assisting him in his reentry plan. We have a plan that is capable of servicing Mr. Lambert and seeing to it that all the issues that Mr. Lambert may have in his life, we can service him and help him get to the next level of his life. So with a favorable recommendation from this board, we will ensure you that our long-term reentry plan that we have set in place will assist Mr. Lambert in his successful transition back to society.
Right.
Thank
you. Good, thank you. So before we turn it over to Ms. Hutchinson, Mr. Lambert, is there something you'd like to say to the board?
Excuse me, Ms. Renata, I hate to interrupt. His sister was actually his third speaker, Ms. Thibodeau.
Okay, Oh, I
I'm
do, yes. I apologize, I missed her. Miss Lorraine.
Good afternoon. My name is Lorena Thibodeau, and I am Jackie's living older sister. Jackie and I have been through this for the last 39 years, and I'm a great supporter of Jackie. And I represent myself, my family, my children that believes that I can be his best representation at this time. If Jackie were to release, I mean, Jackie is a fine young man. He's a fine older man now, almost 5 years younger than me. But I mean, Jackie has always been a good asset to me, my family, my children. I mean, my son and I were just talking about it just the other day, how he taught them how to work. But also, if Jackie were free or was given this transition into the free world, I would support Jackie. My family would support him. We would provide a place for him to live with me, and throughout the rest of his life. We'll support him financially until he can find employment on his own. And I have a whole host of brothers, sisters, nieces, and nephews that is great supporters of Jackie. You know, we want to give our deepest condolences to Mrs. Young's family, who have always been a part of our life throughout this whole thing that we've gone through. So our deepest condolences to them as well. But again, I just want to say thank you to the board for allowing me the opportunity to speak on Jackie's behalf. And I hope and pray that we could be reunited again as a family, because we've always been that type of family. I'm sure you've read the letter that I presented to the board, with us being 19 children. My dad died when I was 17, and I helped raise Jackie. I was 10, he was 5. So of course, by the time I was 15, he was only 10. So helping raise my brothers and sisters was a part of my responsibility as well as my older sibling. And Jackie have not been anything but the best brother to all of us. And even when I'm down, I send him an email and Jackie is right there to answer me. You know, so going through this, I would be supporting him throughout all of it. And that's a guarantee from me. And that's how much I believe in him. And I just hope that everybody could feel what I feel. And I just want to say to the panel, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. All right, Mr. Lambert, anything you want to say before we turn it over to Ms. Hutchinson?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to thank the board. I would like to express my deepest sympathy for Mr. George and Mr. Young's family, relatives, friends, loved ones. I'd like to thank my family and supporters for being here today. Thank y'all.
All right, Ms. Hutchinson?
Thank you, board. Mr. Lambert has spent 39 years in prison today, for a crime that he and both his co-defendant have said he was not a part of. There was no physical evidence, and the statement of Mr. Linden has been recanted some 4 or 5 times. If the board sees the most recent declaration by Mr. Linden, he also goes through why he waited so long to implicate the family members that were a part of the crime, and that he waited until they passed away. Mr. Linden also asked for forgiveness from Ms. Young's family and Mr. Lambert's family for the wrong he's done regarding this crime, something that wasn't in any of the previous affidavits he sent. Mr. Lambert and his family have extended their deepest empathy to the Young family. Mr. Lambert truly regrets even being affiliated with people who could commit a crime like that. But if I can switch gears for talk about his rehabilitation. Mr. Lambert admits that he wasn't a saint at the time. His record shows he had been involved in car burglaries. So when he entered prison, he used his time wisely and became a better man. He reconnected with God. And as Mr. Ledoux stated, he was one of the first people to join Cowboys for Christ when it came to Angola and helped build the chapels. He furthered his education. He got his GED and he took courses with the Baptist Theological Seminary. And he picked up a passion and a trade in plumbing. And so please don't fault Mr. Lambert for not having as many certificates as some other people. His volunteer work in plumbing and pesticide on the grounds kind of kept him from it. But if we can talk about how trusted he was with that status, Mr. Lambert has done plumbing all the way down to the B line in staff homes. He volunteered whenever he was needed. He poses no threat to society. In 39 years, he's only had 5 disciplinary infractions, the last one being 24 years ago. In his medical record after the gas poisoning, he was described as a model inmate. When he became sick and required to spend more time inside in the dorm as an orderly, he spends his time speaking to younger men about staying out of trouble in prison. Mr. Lambert comes before you with a solid reentry plan and all the support and services of the Louisiana Parole Project, and the support of an enormous family, because this is not half of them. So today we respectfully ask the board to consider Mr. Lambert's statements in sympathy to the family, the concerns that he had towards his convictions that were outlined in the brief, his disciplinary record, his age and his low Tiger score, his health, his reentry plan, and his family support. And so I have to ask the board, please, if you could grant a favorable recommendation for his clemency. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe we're prepared, Mr. Freeman.
Yes, Mr. Lambert, I have to say, I agree with Mr. Meyer, regardless of the extenuating circumstances. I think you have done the time to earn your release. I think you've been a model prisoner. The warden also has made some good statements about you. So my vote is to grant and commute your sentence to 45 years. And that's how I vote. Good luck to you.
Mrs. Jackson.
All right, my vote is the same. Mr. Lambert, you have served your time well. You've been a model inmate, no disciplinary issues, and great service to the institution. So my vote is the same.
Thanks, Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Lambert, job well done. My vote is the same reason. Good luck.
And I concur with my colleagues, Mr. Lambert. My vote also is to make the recommendation, commute your sentence to 45 years. So we'll make that recommendation. Good luck to you.
Well, do you think that he was actually innocent? That's the question I have. We have seen, I think, just one other hearing where someone showed up to their hearing in this situation where they spent this much time in prison, 39 years, where they're facing a life sentence where they know that they need to say, I'm guilty. They know that the last thing that they can do to help themselves would be to deny it. And we've only seen one other case like that I can recall. And I'll maybe have it pop up here. I personally believe that man who said he was innocent also was innocent. But in this case, I also think he's innocent. I mean, why would you, just to deny it for all these years? And then you look through the details of the record, and I mean, you hear that his co-defendants wrote affidavits. And that's kind of what, and thank you, Richard, for sharing this. It's kind of what, here's a whole article, Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. It was written on in 2012. They've been fighting for trying to prove his innocence. And, you know, the way that it works in 1986, it was a 54-year-old. He was 50. Sorry, that was. So basically, what happened is that it was 79-year-old Georgian woman who was found with 51 stab wounds. 51. That is just terrifying. And also a broken neck. She was found in her house near downtown. And it was ransacked. Jewelry and other belongings were all missing. Now, a few weeks later, he and his co-defendants were arrested, and he was found with possessions of some of her stuff. And then the police say that he confessed to it, and his co-defendants said that he, Jackie Lambert, was the mastermind. And what's one thing that's interesting to me about this case, and they bring it up in this article, is that the Innocence Project did not take it up. And that's just strange. You know, and it did bring a lot of questions about this case. Why wouldn't the Innocence Project back this man? Oh, here's something interesting. On August 27th, the district judge will decide whether the Innocence Project of New Orleans, who has helped exonerate 20 convicts, and this is, of course, written then, should have access to records related to Lambert's arrest conviction. And this is actually confusing. They really need a judge to allow that. Can't you just do like a Freedom of Information Act? What am I missing here? So they did ask for information. And I wonder what happened. Did they not get the information? Yeah, I'm just confused. But two reasons they don't want to release it. One was the exemption for confidential informants. The other was an exemption for investigative techniques, both of which explain to me by police department of being directly applicable to the redactions. They have redactions for those really techniques by police. Ooh. There's a lot of corruption. That's my bottom line takeaway. But then you do have his court record, and the court record, it has appeals for a lot of sketchy stuff in it. They state in here that the detectives, that he had confessed to the detectives, but then you have one detective that claimed that both the detectives were in the room when he made his confession, and then you have another detective say that he was the only one in the room that made the confession, that when he made his confession. But then when they tried to get him to put his confession on paper, he refused to do it. So there's even doubt about a confession. He took the stand in his own defense. He said that he had nothing to do. He wasn't even near the house. He was friends with them. He had possession of the stuff, but he had nothing to do with the crime. That's like his take. And that a confession was fabricated. There was a date on one of the police reports that was wrong, apparently, but but it was 1 day off. But the problem with it being 1 day off was that not some, of course you can make a typo, but I think it was more about when they claimed that he had done his confession versus the date it was dated. I'm sorry I'm not going into it maybe more as thorough as I would like to. I have the plumber here, and it's a later time of the day, and my phone is ringing off the hook, and it's just I think after just doing so many hours of these hearings, I begin to lose focus. Here's the date discrepancy. Defendant Lambert denies having anything to do with the burglary or the red room. He has attempted to show Linden committed the red room alone. Some of the investigating officers testified the defendant made a statement during the course of the interrogation indicating that he was present at the rear of the house during the commission of the crimes. However, the defendant took a stand at trial and testified on his own behalf, denying the alleged statements any involvement whatsoever in the crime. The record contains inconsistent evidence regarding the time alleged statement was made. Some of the officers stated that the statement was made after the defendant was taken to the victim's home, and others stated it occurred prior to the visit of the victim's home because they took him to the victim's home, and I guess that would have given him some information about the crime. After unanimous jury verdict finding the defendant guilty, this appeal ensued. And the person who insisted that he was there recanted. Linden admits to stabbing the victim with 3 times with a screwdriver to lie motionless and pull blood. However, he denies initially attacking the victim. Co-defendant Linden was convicted of 2 counts of burglary in first degree. Furthermore, there is a pending charge of first degree, and 2 burglaries are marked. Oh, they had a second charge going against someone else. Wow, 5 days prior to Miss Young. It's I frankly I believe him. I don't know why who knows why the Innocence Project didn't take this up, but for someone to maintain their innocence for this long and to have his co-defendants, sign affidavits to say that he didn't have anything to do with it. But love to know what you think. I'll put the links in the description. And with that, I'll let you go.